Hey y'all, happy Sunday and welcome to this week's live Q&A session. This is the portion of the show where we allow YouTube to send out notifications that we're going live. If you're watching this live Q&A on replay, please scrub ahead until this graphic disappears and the actual show begins. If you're watching live and you have any comments or questions, please go ahead and put them in the live chat. But for now, grab a beverage, sit back, and relax while the countdown timer does its thing. Then we'll get started. Aloha! Happy Sunday, everybody. It's been a hot week, getting ready to get hotter, and I'm not the only one who is having that issue. Eyal Peleg over in Israel, yeah. I mean, I kneel at the altar of blessed air conditioning every day. It is really sweltery. We're supposed to hit 106 today, which is, I don't remember, right at 41 Celsius. And tomorrow we're supposed to hit 111 Fahrenheit, which is 44 Celsius. So I feel for you. It's not fit outside for man nor beast. It's a great time to stay indoors in the air conditioning or at least sitting by a fan. And I'm a big fan of fans. So before I start a fan club, um, I want to take care of some unfinished business from last week. We had Beverly Benham last week talking about on an extended cut 1/4 inch end mill. She was having problems with the bit slipping down. And I talked about cleaning the shaft of the collet, the shaft of the bit rather, and the collet with isopropyl alcohol. And she followed up with me saying that she cleaned the end mill with isopropyl alcohol and tested it on cutting a 1 inch deep 3 inch by 3 inch pocket, a task that would take it longer and be harder on the bit than it was taking for it to slip previously. It cut without slipping and left a beautifully smooth surface on the bottom of the pocket. So um, basically, it was either a dirty shaft or a dirty collet. And that brings back home the need to do some maintenance every once in a while, because even though the wood that we're working on um, it is generally dry, uh, even if it's 10% or 8% moisture, um, you're looking at 8 to 10% moisture. And yes, the chips are supposed to take the heat with it, but you're going to get some evaporation. And it's not just water, it's oils, it's tannins, it's pitch, it's resins that are within the fibers of that wood or that whatever material it is. Even if it's an engineered wood like plywood or um, MDF or something like that, there is some moisture in it. And that's going to build up. Even just dust will build up in that. So cleaning collets and cleaning end mills is an important thing to do. Personally, I take the bit and the collet out of the spindle the minute I'm done running it. Before I move everything out of the way, before I move the gantry back and lift up my Z and everything, I pull that collet and that bit out. And then probably, what depends on which one it is, my 1/4 inch and my 1/2 inch collets get the most use. Probably once a week, with uh, I clean them up with isopropyl alcohol, 91%. And we were at the store the other day. I checked it again, and a quart is less than $4. It's that cheap. Now there are specialist cleaners out there, but I haven't found the need for them personally. But just some care and cleaning, it will save you a lot of heartache. Now, she goes further to say she really doesn't like the sound it makes when it cuts. It's higher pitched and louder than my other end mills. And even her husband noticed when he walked through the shop. He said, wow, that doesn't sound right. She goes further to describe her feeds and speeds and what have you. And it is a 3.5 inch long bit. So for a 1/4 inch collet, that is pretty long. And so it's going to have different harmonics. I mean, if you look at something like this standard quarter-inch downcut spiral end mill, it is, how long is it? Overall length is right at 2.5 inches. But probably an inch of that is going to go into the collet. So you only got about 1.5 inches or sticking out of the collet. You're not going to get a lot of vibration. But with a 3.5 inch long bit, you're going to have quite a bit more. And all materials have a resonance. They have a certain frequency that, it's going to start humming or screaming or making noise. So that's just something that's endemic with that bit, or not endemic. That's just a part of that bit, you know. You get something like this 1/2 inch diameter downcut, and you're putting about 1.25 inches of it into the collet. You've got quite a bit more going in there. Now you're putting about 1.5 inches of it in the collet, and it's 4 inches long. And I get no resonance, no screeching, no screaming. No, this thing is a beast. I mean, it hums through material like you wouldn't believe. So she's not feeling super, super confident with that bit. And deep reach bits are kind of nerve-wracking in the best of times, simply because of that. So you kind of have to, there's a balancing act. Feeds and speeds, I would kind of leave them the same as you would normally for a regular bit, but maybe take shallower cuts. Now, that does increase how long it takes to run a G-code file. That does increase machine time, but you're less likely to suffer from bit deflection than you would on if you're trying to take a huge bite. So it's that kind of a balancing act. So, and that's just part of the problem when you're trying to cut real deep. And that's why I go with the 1/2 inch over the 1/4 inch when I'm trying to get something that's deeper than maybe 1 inch thick. So, and then we won't even get into bits like, well, I'm fixing to get into bits like this thread mill. This puppy is 5.5 inches long. And, but then again, it's not trying to cut super deep. It's cutting from the side. So, and it's not being real aggressive. So, Michael Mazalik says, I have found that 1/4 inch bits are always the loudest. I have 6-inch long bits and they're as loud as the shorter ones. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's something to think about as well. And that is the speed of the outside of that bit. That's something that's not really talked about. But when you're doing 16,000 RPMs, for the sake of argument, that's how fast that spindle shaft is spinning. How fast are those cutting edges going? And which is one of the reasons why the larger the diameter of the bit, the slower you're supposed to run that spindle RPM. You get something like this big kahuna, this thread mill, you really need to slow it down because the outside edges of those cutters, with the center spinning at 16,000 RPM, the outside edges of those cutters are, hauling. They're really taking off. So, A.L. Peleg says, is it not better to go deeper and move slower in the sense that you use more of the length of the edge of the bit's length? On a shorter bit, yes. But on a real long bit, if you're taking a deep bite out of that material, you risk bit deflection. You can slow down your feed rate or increase your router RPM, but it's better to take a shallower cut and not put as much stress on that long bit. So, and then Dwayne Ruthig, who turned me on to these thread mills. The good thing about your thread milling bit is it's fast, less than a minute per cut. Yeah, yeah. So, and William Morelli, changing the spindle speed may get the bit away from its natural resonant frequency, and that's true. That is true. But overall, she had very good results with that longer bit. After cleaning and everything, she just is not really thrilled about the sound it makes. So, yeah, maybe slowing down the spindle speed or increasing the spindle speed slightly to get it out of that range. It's natural resonant frequency. But yeah, that's true. Um, let's see. The Phoenician artisan says, same here. I was cutting 1.5 inch material with a 1/4 inch long bit. Had to take 10 passes with decreasing RPM and increasing feed rate helped. Okay. Okay. There you go. There you go. So just kind of have to be a little bit gentler. Russell Faraday says, I use a lot of long cutters. They are noisy. Fine tuning RPM sometimes helps, but deflection and chatter is the nature of the beast. Okay. Okay. Yeah. I'm a major fan of 1/2 inch collets and 1/2 inch bits. They're pricey, but if you have the capacity to do that, um, then I would highly recommend it. Oh, Beverly has joined us. Okay, good. I appreciate the discussion. My experience is limited to a couple of years of my own trials and errors. And, that's what most folks are based on. That's what my experience is based on. I tell folks that 8 years ago, I couldn't even spell CNC. Now I've built 4 of them. So it is trial and error as well as talking to people who have been there before me. So just kind of dialing it in and figuring it out for that particular bit may be the way to go. And it's going to react differently in different materials as well. It's going to be completely different in a softwood like pine than it will be in a hardwood like maple or walnut. So, and you don't know until you get into it, which is why I constantly preach practice in some scrap. If you need 2 board feet of something, get 3. Actually, I add 10% for scrap anyway, which is why I have mountains of it over here off camera. So, yeah. On the subject of cleaning collets, I don't see him in the chat. He may be there. I just haven't seen him yet. Ray Dixon, a gentleman and a scholar, long-time friend of this channel. We were discussing brushes, and I mentioned these kind of brushes to him, and he sent me a 5-pack of them. And thank you, Ray. You guys, this is what I mean when I say I have the best viewers on YouTube. This is perfect. I mean, this little end here, that little skinny end right there will get down inside that collet and just scrub everything out with some isopropyl alcohol. And these are perfect. I will try to find an Amazon link to some of these and put them in the description of this live stream when we're done. Let me make a note of that. There we go. So let's get into. So thank you, Beverly, for the follow-up. I really appreciate that. So many times I make a suggestion and then I never hear, did that work? Did that not work? What's been the experience? So Beverly, I really appreciate the follow-up. So yes, that is true. That is very true. Um, I tend to look for things on like Amazon or somewhere online, just simply because no matter where you are, you can go and see it and then see if it's available in your area. Because a lot of places don't have that type of shop. So, but yes, you're absolutely right. Let's see. Let's get in here and get to some of your questions. Mario Montoya has one that's pretty easy to answer. So I'll do him first. Been noticing I'm getting compacted epoxy shavings in my downcut V-bit epoxy carvings. I'm having to clean the compacted shavings out with an X-Acto knife to clean up the edges, running at 60 inches per minute with my router on the lowest RPM. That is going to be a problem, especially with the downcut V-bit. I use, let me grab one here. I didn't grab one before we came along. I grabbed the wrong one. There we go. I tend to use this type of a V-bit. This is 15 degree V-bit. I tend to use this type for the epoxy carvings. 15, 30, whatever, or 60, whatever the project calls for. And I don't get shavings compacted in the carve, but you are going to have some shavings that you're going to have some shavings to clean up. And I use either an X-Acto knife or I have, grab one, Mark. I have one of these little bent picks that I got from here in the US. Harbor Freight has them. And you will have along the edges, you'll have some cleanup to do. And no, Russell, it's nothing to do with epoxy being cured. Um, I had the same thing with epoxy that had been curing for a week. There will be a little bit of cleanup in real tight corners and along edges where it slices in and it's just warm enough to want to stick. And it doesn't take long. If you're going to be surfacing it again, you can get in there with a stiff brush. One of these would probably do it. A firm toothbrush or something like that, and you can get rid of a lot of it that way with a brush. And you don't, because you're going to be surfacing it, you don't have to worry about scratching the surface of the epoxy because it's going to be removed. But yeah, it's that there will always be a little bit of cleanup. Now, I ordered downcut spiral V-bits. I haven't received them yet, so I can't comment on that, but it stands to reason that a downcut is going to try to force those chips back down into the carve. And maybe a downcut is not the tool to use. Maybe a standard V-bit would be better for that. I don't know what you're using for dust collection, but something I have done on most of my V carves, not 100%, but most of my V carves is, depending upon how long the carve is, I'll run it a second time and let the bit go in and do the cleanup. And you'd be surprised at how much material it will remove on a second pass. Now, if it's a 1 hour carve, obviously, but it's going to depend on the time spent. Would you rather spend another 45 minutes running that tool path a second time or spend 2 hours cleaning up? So what's your priority? Doing the cleanup on inlays is tedious work, but I don't know how many of you follow Bro in Wood. who makes the inlaid end grain cutting boards, he released a video, I want to say yesterday, where he actually did a voiceover this time, not just music. And he talks about that. Cleaning up the carvings is a long, tedious process, but one that has to be done if you're going to get a good inlay finish, whether it be epoxy or wood or some other material. So I'm afraid it's just part of the process, Mario. That might be it might be the fact that you're using a downcut bit. That may be a major contributor to it. You might try a standard V bit and see if there's a big difference. But yeah, I would go with that. Let's see here. Nice little segue here. Dwayne Ruthig says, what is a good finish for a cutting board made of wormy maple? The holes seem like a problem. The holes are going to be a big problem, Dwayne, and not just because of the obvious and trying to seal it or what have you, but bacteria is going to get into those wormholes, and you don't want that. If this is going to be used, I would highly recommend, as somebody else did up above here, and I'll have to find that comment, but I would highly recommend filling those holes with epoxy, or now with epoxy, or if you can, maybe, I don't know what you're doing, maybe drill them out and plug them with another type of wood or put an inlay or something like that. But for instance, I'm working on a cutting board right now. Let me go ahead and swap over cameras. Now watch it not be in focus. There it is. I'm working on this cutting board right now, and I'm in the process of waxing it as we speak. And I just got wax all over and oil all over my fingers. I had to go back through with CA glue and spot fill a couple of knot holes and what have you. And because you don't know what's inside the wood when you surface it. And you can open up little defects and various issues when you start getting into surfacing. And okay, said just finishing a dining room table and wanted to make a matching cutting board. The holes are going to be an issue. I would definitely fill them with epoxy. Now, are you talking side grain, edge grain, end grain? That's going to also play a bit of a role, because anything you do with end grain is going to soak through. And I mean, you can literally take an end grain cutting board and put oil on the surface, depending upon how much you put on the surface. You'll see it drip through the bottom, depending upon the wood species. Okay, it's side grain. That's going to be a little bit less of a problem. That'll be a lot easier. I would definitely fill those wormholes with epoxy, and it's up to you how you do it. I don't know what. Well, you said it was maple. You could go with a clear. You could go with for no contrast at all, or you could go with black for high contrast, or you could go with whatever color you'd like. I can't remember the name of the process now, and I know somebody here knows exactly what I'm talking about. It's a Japanese style of repairing broken ceramics with gold or a precious metal, gold or silver, whatever they have. And I don't remember the name of the process, but you're not hiding the repair, you're featuring it. And so maybe doing something similar with that material would be the way to go. So side grain makes it a lot easier to do that. But I would certainly fill them. And, you're going to have to, that's one thing about like this end grain cutting board. It needs a lot of wax on it because it's got to fill in those pores. Otherwise, bacteria is going to get in there and potentially make somebody sick. So, Brooks Martin says, I found it interesting that Broen Wood soaks his cutting boards in a tank of mineral oil for a couple of hours. I follow Andre over at MTM Wood on his YouTube channel. Now, he obviously is making a lot more cutting boards than I ever will. And he has a tank full of mineral oil, and he drops the boards into that oil, submerges them for about 10 to 15 seconds, puts it up in a rack, lets it drain off for about 5 hours, then does it again. Then he starts applying his wax. I don't have a tank, so I do have a big pan I put into a garbage bag and just put oil all over the place, all over it. If you follow me on Facebook, you saw a post yesterday. I put oil all over it, both sides, and then put it up in a rib rack for the barbecue and let it drain, and then did it. I did it 3 times, a total of 3 times yesterday. And Kintsugi, thank you very much. And Michael, thank you very much, Kintsugi. I couldn't remember the name, but I like the aesthetic. I think it looks awesome, and it's actually a stroke of genius, in my opinion. But yeah, instead of trying to hide the flaws, highlight them, and you get a far more interesting piece. My opinion. But yeah, soaking in mineral oil, it's going to depend on what types of glue that you use. Some glues don't handle long exposure to oil like that very well. Not that it's going to make the glue break down or anything, but it can actually change the color of the glue, making it more likely that you're going to see any kind of where glue basically filled, some oddball gaps within the fibers. It can make it stand out, and I don't like that look. But yeah, that will also get into Gary Wolf saying cutting dark walnut leaves burn marks no matter what speeds or feeds. Is this typical? No, that is not typical. And case in point, here's a piece of walnut panel that I surfaced on my CNC with a 2-inch fly cutter. That burn mark on the edge is from my table saw blade. You can see this was too wide to go through my planer. You can see that there is absolutely no burning on that walnut at all. And it's the same with that cutting board back there that's still soaking up the oil. There was no burning on that at all. It's going to sound weird. It's going to sound goofy. But are you sure your spindle slash router is spinning the bit in the right direction? If the bit's trying to cut backwards, because I know on my spindle I can run it clockwise or counterclockwise. If it's trying to run backwards, or if it's running too fast, that can happen. Burning, the walnut is susceptible to burn. Cherry, oh my God, you can burn cherry loading it into the truck if you're not careful. You just look at cherry wrong, it'll burn. But if you've got everything dialed in right, you should be getting no burning at all. Burning is generally a sign that either your spindle / router RPMs are too high, or your feed rate is too low, or a combination of the two. So slow down your spindle RPM and increase your feed rate, and you should get a good result. For instance, surfacing that panel that black walnut panel on with my 2-inch fly cutter, I was doing 220 inches per minute. It's only taking 10 thousandths of an inch off per pass, but it's moving quite quickly. Okay, no, not going backwards. Okay. Second, how many flutes on the bit? Generally speaking, 2 flute is more than enough. Now, I say that, and my Amana fly cutter is 3 flutes, but it's also very large and spread apart. And my spindle RPM is slowed down for that. I'm running at 14,000 RPM. So, you know, but burning as the chip is cut and ejected, it's supposed to take the heat with it. If it's moving slow enough to where the surface is burning, then slow down the RPM, and if you can't slow it down any further, speed up the feed rate, because it should be taking the heat with it, and that heat should not be building up on the surface at all. So let's see here. We answered that one. Let's get up here. Vortex 8 has a multi-part question. Said, last week you were talking about setting up project zeros on the machine, and I got to wondering about zeroing a project that is not square, i.e. round or machine to a point to where you don't have a square corner to reference off of. Would you at that point set up a planned point on the machine, or are there other ways that you would zero something like that? There are a bunch of alternatives. There are a bunch of there are a lot of ways to go on this. If you're talking about something that you do a lot of, for instance, you see right behind me, right there, my logo on the gantry of the machine. That is about a 3.5 inch diameter. It's an epoxy coaster that a longtime subscriber sent to me, which I thought was just cool as heck. And there ain't no way I'm going to use it for a coaster. That sucker got mounted on the machine, and that's where it's going to stay. I just thought it was cool. But if you're cutting a lot of those, you can come up with a jig that you can put into a known location that you can clamp a piece into, or use double-sided tape or something of that nature. I'm going to be, it's going to be a while down the road, but I'm going to be creating some jigs and fixtures for just this kind of a thing, because there are going to be a few things I am going to make that I need to make multiple parts of that are not square. So that is one option. Make a fixture that you can put in that location, then set up a work offset so that you can put one in, clamp it down, or tape it down, run your G code, and when that's done, move the gantry out of the way, lift that one out, put the next one in, run the G code, etc. So a fixture is one way to go. Second way to go is just using the old tried and true method of finding the center of that piece and setting your XY datum position in your file to the center. Put in a V-bit such as this. If you have a broken 15-degree V-bit, and if you use 15-degree V-bits, you have one, and set your XY 0 with that, and then carve the object. Now, that's not setting up a known location, but generally speaking, if you need to do multiples like that, then it's time to make a fixture so that all of that is done for you. And My work offset videos will help you in that regard. Excuse me. In that you can mount that fixture somewhere on your table in a known location and just automatically reference to either the center of that piece or what would be the lower left corner. In this case, you wouldn't be setting your XY0 to the lower left corner of the material. You would be setting it to the lower left corner of the jig. And then that offset, the center of your material, would be a part of your design. I'll do a video on it later on. It's going to be quite a while down the road, but I do have some projects coming up where I'm going to need to do just that. Then trust me, I'll be making a video on it. So let's see here. I don't know, did that help you at all? I really hope it did. Okay, William Morelli wants to know, I want to make table legs, the type that are usually turned on my CNC with a spire and double-sided 3D. Vectric, I have not done it. Vectric has a video tutorial on their YouTube channel about just this topic. They didn't make a table leg. What they made was a sculpture of a dolphin. And it will get you started. It'll get you headed in the right direction. I will find that tutorial. I didn't have time before we went live. I will find that tutorial and I'll link it in the description as soon as we're done. I've already written myself a note to do it. Personally, I think you're going to have more luck with doing four-sided. And that may kind of freak people out. There's a gentleman by the name of, oh my gosh, I just lost his name. Oh man, I just lost his name. Peter Van der Hoof. I will find his channel. He did a video in which he carved a Greek column, about 18 inches tall, about 1.5 feet tall, four-sided, using a keyed indexing method. Now, I'm assuming you don't have a rotary axis, otherwise this wouldn't be an issue. But he carved this Greek column, top side, then rotated it, carved the next side, rotated it, carved the next side, rotated it, and finished it up. The problem with doing it two-sided is you're going to get great detail to a certain portion, but then as it gets around the side, if you don't have a 5-axis machine, that bit can't turn and cut correctly. So you're going to lose details. But by being able to flip it 90 degrees and then cut again, you're going to be able to carry that detail a lot further than if you just did one half and then flipped it over and did the other half. So I will put the link to Vectric's tutorial on that dolphin sculpture in the description of this live stream as soon as I'm finished. And I will also go find, let me see if I can find it now. As a matter of fact, I will go find his YouTube channel. I know that there are people. Dennis Van Hoof. Dennis Van Hoof is his name. And he is an absolutely brilliant artist. And some of the things he does on the CNC router is just absolutely amazing. I will put a link to his video also down in the description of this video, of this live stream as soon as we're finished. But okay, now Martin Pearson says Vectric has a tutorial on multi-sided machining. I think it was from one of the user group meetings, but I believe it's on their channel. It was St. Hugh. I will look for it, Martin, and thank you very much. I know that they did a presentation during one of the user group meetings, but I didn't know if they had put that video on their channel. I will go look for it, because that's something that I want to do as well. So it's an intriguing topic. It's one that I want to get into because I think the possibilities are just absolutely amazing with something like that. If you don't have a rotary axis, there are ways of getting around it. There are ways of doing what you want to do. We just have to think outside the box. So I've got Dennis's channel pulled up. I will get the link to the two-sided, and I will look for the multi-sided machining videos, and I'll link them as well. So I'm sorry I can't be more help to you right now, William, but give me about 10 minutes after we're finished live here, and I will find those links and put them in the description. Okay. Let's see. Robert Dymock says, do you have or could you produce a video that talks about the advantages or disadvantages of a boundary offset, machining allowance, and perhaps roughing strategy for 3D work? The short answer is I don't have a video that focuses on that, but I have a couple of 3D carving videos where I do discuss it. But I will put this on the list, Robert, because it is an important topic to discuss. And it's one that doesn't get a lot of love. Basically, we can do a little bit of this right now. A boundary offset is where the bit actually carves slightly beyond the model that it's carving. Generally speaking, not always, but generally speaking, that boundary offset is equal to the diameter of the bit. That way the bit makes a pass on the model and goes beyond, then steps over, and then comes back. So all of your step over movements are done off of the model. That's one advantage right there. Let's see, what were the other ones? The machining allowance is done in roughing, and the machining allowance is basically how close to the model is that roughing bit actually going to get. You want to leave some material behind for the finishing bit to come along and clean up. You don't want, for instance, I do all my roughing with a 1/4 inch upcut spiral end mill, just standard. I don't use a ball nose. I used to, but then I found out that I was just adding machine time unnecessarily. So I just use a standard end mill. And you don't want an edge of that end mill, one of these corners here, to cut away something that's in the model. So the machining allowance is used to basically carve away the bulk of the material, but stay away from the actual model itself so that your roughing bit doesn't cut into something it shouldn't cut into. I generally go with a machining allowance of 30 thousandths of an inch, which is, let me see what that is in metric, 0.030 inches in millimeter. And that is about 3/4 of a millimeter. 30 thousandths of an inch is 0.76 millimeters. That's how far away that roughing bit is going to stay from the model. Now, that doesn't mean that it's going to remove everything and leave you with that 30 thousandths of an inch or 3/4 of a millimeter. It may leave more. It's just not going to carve any closer than that. And that's, again, as I've said already repeatedly, to kind of keep the bit away from the model so it doesn't cut something it wasn't supposed to cut. Okay, the roughing strategy for 3D work, I'm assuming you mean raster versus offset, Z-level versus 3D raster. I have not talked a lot about that, but I will do a video on it. And in fact, that would be a good video to do in the next couple of weeks. I'm going to be doing the lean-to update and the tiling toolpath before I get to this, but that would be a good video to get out sooner rather than later. So let's see. Russell Faraday says, I keep intending to do a multi-sided video. Learning editing is not easy. Well, it's just like anything else, Russell. It takes practice. I mean, I'm not good at it either. I make a lot of mistakes, but you learn, you move on. And I'm not trying to be broadcast quality. I'm trying to get information to folks, and people are more forgiving than we give them credit for, and we try to be harder on ourselves than we need to be when it comes to videos. I find people will forgive less than stellar video, and it's a good thing too, because I mean, I'm using webcams and stuff. They will not forgive bad audio, and I'm harder on myself when it comes to audio than I am anything else. I take more time editing audio than I do editing video. And that's because I have my preferences. And there are certain things that bother me in audio that I try to eliminate that other people may never even notice. But if you just stick with it, practice it, and just keep going, you will get better at it. And Russell, I'd like to see some of your work. I'd like to see a multi-sided video, you know. So, yeah, please do. Excuse me, boy. We've got some fires way, way, way miles away from us, and but we're getting the smoke. So my sinuses are going absolutely nutso. So please forgive me for that. Okay, I think I've talked about everybody. Okay, William Morelli wants to know, is mineral oil food friendly? Yes. And here's what I'm using. Let me grab it. I'm going to grab a fresh bottle because I don't want to get my hands all oily on the one that I already have opened. This is pharmaceutical grade. It is 100% food safe, inert, and in fact, it's a laxative. It is FDA safe. It is food safe. It is everything safe. The only thing I would say is if you get it on your hands, get in and wash them, only because everything you touch is going to be slippery as heck. And you don't want to try to put a bit into a collet after using this. This is cheap as well. This is a store brand. Get it in the pharmacy department. This is 16 ounces, 1 pint, 473 milliliters, and it was less than $4. It's not expensive. Ask your pharmacist if you can't find it. It is 100% completely inert. And again, it's pharmaceutical grade. It's used as a laxative. So, let's see here. Vortex 8 says, do you know a video or other resource that would give me information on what bits and end mills to use with what project? I did a video, and I will put a link to it in the description. It is bits and end mills that I think most beginners would need to get them through just about any beginner project. Um, I get into a little bit of how to use them, but basically put what bits to use with what project, the project is going to dictate that. If it's a V carving, you're going to use a V bit. And preview early, preview often, I always say. If you're doing some text, calculate it with a 90-degree V bit and see how deep that cuts. Excuse me. If you put your cursor over the title of that toolpath after you calculate it, it'll tell you the maximum depth it's going to cut. If that's too shallow, switch over to a 60-degree V bit, recalculate the toolpath, and check that. See how deep that's going to cut. And the project is going to dictate which V bit you use. If you're cutting something out, an end mill. If you're 3D carving, a ball nose. The project will dictate what type of bit you're going to use. But I did do a video on bits and end mills that I think most beginners would need to get them through just about any project that you're going to start off with. And I'll stand by that list with one exception. Well, two exceptions. I made a mistake when I made that video. I said 1/4-inch end mills. And yes, 1/4-inch end mills are important. Add to that list 1/8-inch end mills. So for you folks, metric 6mm and 3mm. I would add those two to the list. And I suggested standard ball nose bits. I would change that to tapered ball nose bits. What that tip diameter is going to depend on the project. If it's something that's about that big around that you're going to hold in your hand and see up close, you'll want to get a small tip on that ball nose to get maximum detail. If it's going to be mounted on a wall in a building 16 feet off of the ground, you can probably get away with a 1/4-inch ball nose because you're not going to be up close looking at the detail. So it's a back and forth there. Martin Pearson has a great point here. The Vectric monthly projects would be a good start. They list the bits you need for each project. Yes, I concur 100%. And in fact, log into your V&Co account, and I think they moved it to the last page. Go into the free projects, project of the month, and go all the way back. I think it's on the last page, and look for the Paradise box. If you're using Vectric software and you haven't built the Paradise box yet, shame on you. It's almost a rite of passage. You have to make a Paradise box if you're using Vectric software. And it's an awesome box. It really is. I made one for each of my granddaughters the first year I had my CNC router, and they still rave about him. It's an awesome project. Todd HCNC says the type of material can dictate the bits too. True. You're not going to be using a surfacing bit on acrylic, probably. You're probably not going to be using an OG bit on acrylic, probably. So, the project is going to dictate, and you'll get good at it. You will figure out, you'll look at things, okay, I need to go with a taper ball nose with, probably a 16th of an inch would be good for this one. It's just going to depend on what you're doing and what you're trying to achieve. And ask questions. Folks will tell you. I mean, if you see something posted on social media that you just absolutely love, ask them what bits they use. I would usually put in the description of any of my videos what bits I'm using. So let's see here. We'll need to get done pretty quick. Richard Canton said, buy your mineral oil at farm and feed stores. I used a lot in equine care. You can get it in 55-gallon drums if you need that much. You know, it's a matter of how much you need. I bought 2 bottles because it was less than $4 a bottle. And I probably won't open this second one because I don't do a lot of this type of project. Now, I say that, and I know my kids are going to want some of these cutting boards now, so I may end up making more. But, so let's see here. I need to go ahead and start thinking about wrapping this up. William Morelli wants to know, do you plan on adding a rotary axis to your Avid CNC in the future? I want to. And it's coming. I would like to, and a laser, but let's see here. Brooks Martin says, as a result, the best food save wood finishes are Rubio Monocoat Oil Plus 2C, linseed oil, beeswax, coconut oil, food grade mineral oil, paraffin wax, walnut oil, carnauba wax, and pure tongue oil. Just about every finish is food safe after it's completely cured. Not every finish, but just about all of them. The problem becomes with film finishes. Okay. They will over time wear and flake and peel and stuff like that. And who wants that in their food? I prefer an oil finish like you're talking about, Brooks. I've not tried Rubio Monocoat. I've not tried any of those nano coatings, but the product that I'm using, again, is Howard's Butcher Block Conditioner, hashtag not sponsored. I got down at my local hardware store, and it is mineral oil, beeswax, and carnauba wax. Okay. And yes, they use pharmaceutical grade mineral oil as well. So it is, it's pretty good stuff. So, David Williams, thank you very much. You are the man. Thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it. I thought I shut that off. Okay. Let's see here. There was one last one here. On a 3D finishing tool path, is it really necessary to run a 16th inch ball nose after running an 8th inch ball nose? No. It depends on what the project is. Again, if it's something that you're going to be holding in your hand, looking at up close, let's say the back of an oval hand mirror, and you want a nice pattern on the back, you probably will want to go with a small bit. You don't necessarily need to use a 1/8 inch bit first. People do that more to protect their 1/16 inch bit. So by removing most of it with that neck size up, you're making the job of that 16th of an inch bit that much easier. but it's not necessary. I know folks that don't even rough. They just go straight to the finishing tool path. And you can do that depending upon what the project is. So, you know. Um and this will be the last. I'm sorry. We're going to have to end it here pretty quick. So Vortex 8 says, so should I go to Paradise for my first project? Probably not your first. Probably not your first. Something that I suggest people do for a first project is V-carve an address sign, your house number. You don't even have to hang it up. You can put it in your shop on the wall. Do a pocket to carve out an area. And in fact, I show this on one of my my V carving videos, which I will link. I'll find which one it is. V carving. Pocket out an area. V carve your house number in that pocket. Then cut out the outside shape. You've learned 3 tool paths right there and use 3 different bits on the same project. No, you've used 2 different bits. Take that back. But it's a simple project to do, a lot of instant gratification, and you can expand from there. The Paradise box, you would also, I'm trying to remember, it's a lot of V carving, mostly V carving, and a profile cutout, cutting out the shape, and a few pockets. So that would be a good second project. And I'm here to tell you, it's a great project to do. Again, I made the maple, I made the front and rear panel, the top and bottom panels out of maple. Then I made the 2 end panels out of cherry. And they went over very well. So, David Williams, thank you again very, very much. Before I dig out, I wanted to give a shout out to and thank my buddy, as soon as I find him up here in the chat, Steve Nealon at Harneal Media. I know I talk about him a lot, but there's a reason I talk about him a lot. If you are thinking about creating a web store, starting your web presence, increasing your web presence, there's no better way than with your own website. And Steve is the only guy I will ever recommend. There's a link to Harneal Media in every video on my channel, and I will continue to do so. Steve knows what he's doing. He does it very well. He's very competitive priced, and it's 100% personalized service when you work with Harneal Media. You work with Steve, not some nameless, faceless person in a call center somewhere that you'll never contact again. I highly endorse Steve at Harneal Media, and he sponsors marklindsaycnc.com, my website. Jim, Sargon, Bill Coleman, Brooks Martin, Dwayne Ruthig, and anybody else further up in the chat that I'm not seeing. I will see you guys tomorrow night for the members only live stream. Remember to check the community tab here on my YouTube page for the link to the members only live stream. If you don't know what I'm talking about or would like some information on becoming a channel member, look down below the video panel. There is a link that says join. Click that link. You're not joining anything, but a panel will pop open and a video will play that'll tell you all about channel membership and how to become a member if you'd so like to, or if you'd so like to, or if you'd like to. Yeah. Anyway, so I will see you guys tomorrow evening for the members only live stream. Let's see. Right after this, I have automatically forwarded everybody over to my buddy, John Cousins, over at Wood If I Could, Scroll Saw Art. He's live streaming right now. And I'm going to go over there and be a part of his live stream. Hopefully, I'll see some of you over there. If not, I'll see you next week. Don't know what I'm going to have for you next week. We'll see what happens. So until then, y'all take care. Have a great rest of your Sunday. Thank you very much for spending part of your Sunday with me. And don't go outside. Don't go outside. It's hot, man. Just relax, stay in the nice, cool area, have a nice, cool beverage. And remember, there's a whole week ahead of us. Y'all take care.